The thinking curriculum at PS 29 is a two-layer practice. We have a primary layer of co-teaching. In our upper grades, we realize that the children have a lot of accountability for academic learning. So the co-teaching model involves classroom teachers and English as second language teachers working together, having an opportunity to present content in science and social studies for children, especially for our L learners, where they highlight and they bring attention to language and academic vocabulary and language structures to help them understand the social studies that's presented to them. We started to identify in our upper grades, our third, fourth, and fifth graders, some text that they might see that might be juicy for them. And juicy just means really complex structures or academic language or vocabulary that might be in there. Over time, we started implementing it in the classroom with the co-teaching model where both teachers, ESL teacher and classroom teacher, would start to work together on deconstructing the sentence.
My co-teacher and I usually plan for our lessons by having a monthly articulation meeting. We go over the essential question. We come up with different strategies and ways to teach it. We go over the content that the kids need to know, and we come up with a culminating activity. Boys and girls, we've been doing such a wonderful job studying how the immigrants came over and settled in New York City. What we're going to focus in on is how these immigrants lived, okay, and where they lived, and how they had to change their lifestyle.
The goal of our lesson today was to let the students have an understanding of what life was like in the tenements for the immigrants when they came over to New York. We reviewed what we had been doing up to that point, so we had already looked at immigration in general and Ellis Island being an immigration station, and then we looked at the vocabulary that was going to be needed to understand the lesson for the day.
Some of the words that I want you to really pay attention to today is a tenement. Okay, here's a picture of a tenement, and this is where the immigrants lived. Okay, a tenement is like a rundown apartment building. Okay, and the tenements were very, very crowded, and this is where the immigrants settled. Okay, another word that I want you to pay attention to is settled. And we're used to this word because we're used to how the colonists came over and they settled in their 13 colonies. Well, it's kind of the same thing. When the immigrants came over into New York City, they settled in these tenements and they had to get used to a new way of life. Okay, so let's get ready to unpack this juicy sentence.
So I'm going to read this sentence to you. The juicy sentence that you guys have in your notebooks is in green. Now I know this is really juicy, but I know you guys are ready for it. So I want you to pay really close attention to the green part, and I want you to think to yourselves, what is the sentence telling me about immigrants? Despite the harsh tenement life, most immigrants recognized the freedom and opportunity America had to offer and settled into their new lives here.
The teachers introduce the sentence first. They read it to the children twice and just have the children write in the pre-column, like a T-chart, what they think the sentence means.
After they jotted it down, we gave them time to turn and talk with a partner about what they had written. And while that was going on, my co-teacher and I were walking around and kind of listening in to see what the students had gotten from it so far.
The sentence is telling me that they are trying to deal living in the harsh tenements, but they realize that they came for America for freedom.
Then the two teachers in collaboration deconstruct the sentence, highlighting and bringing attention to some of the language structures, the vocabulary, and really trying to make meaning of the sentence.
I want to talk about the language in this sentence because it's really important to know about the tenements, but this word right here, this word despite, anyone ever hear that word before?
Despite could also mean ignore. Like the immigrants were ignoring the harsh tenements and the bad qualities about it.
That is awesome thinking. So do you think we learned a little bit about the language in this sentence? Do you think we can revise it in the after column now and make what we wrote in the before column a little bit better?
Through our practice of looking at the sentences, we make a pre- and post-assessment. This now gives us a lot of information in terms of data collection on which language structures or language functions the children really are mastering and which ones they still need to go over and revisit.
Based on their last lesson or based on the writing or the activity that the students did prior to this lesson, where they need their help, is what we target the instruction for in that partnership. I paired the students together according to their needs. They were paired together on the carpet, and they were also paired together as they went off and did the activity. Okay, the activity that we're going to do today, Kyla, is we're going to be looking at real-life photos, and we've done this before, and you're going to really get a vision of how these immigrants lived in New York City. Their task was to analyze a photograph and just state what they saw, what they were thinking, and what it actually meant. So watch Mrs. Wolanski as I model for you what you're going to do with your partner today. Okay, here's a picture of a scene in New York City. Okay, and what I actually see in this photo right now, what I'm zooming in on, is two boys. And the two boys in the street are fighting. Okay, so I'm going to jot that down on my chart.
Marie and I are constantly checking in with each other because it's so important to have communication and to know where is she with the students, where am I with the students.
I'm going to be working with Kyla, Marie, and Abra because the last time they had a problem like zooming in and really getting the actual meaning of the picture.
She might notice something that I don't notice. She might say, these students didn't get this content or this activity of looking at a picture, so I'm going to go over here, just so that we have an idea of what one or the other's doing and to make sure we're covering all of our bases. We're covering the language, we're covering the content.
Carrie and Brenda were having a hard time with the last language that we looked at.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to get them to use this language as well.
Since I'm the ESL teacher, I may be focused more on the language, and I might be focused on, is the child getting this language, or did the child get language that we've already done? So I would tell her, like, you know, the students need help with this language. I'm going to work with them over here. We're giving them all this language and all this vocabulary, so I want to make sure that they're using it in their writing and in their speaking.
This picture makes me think that something good happened. What does it really mean? I said, despite the cracked walls and dirty clothes and cracked, I think that the woman is really happy about her freedom.
This program has really impacted my students in such a positive way. First, of course, about data. Our L students have outperformed our native English speakers on the ELA exam last year, and we're assuming that will be consistent this year. Our L students have no longer plateaued in their reading and writing on the NYC exam, but now they're making ample progress. So the data speaks for the program really working well. And we know that's one source of data is the formal, but the day-to-day practice, I think, in terms of what the students produce, in terms of their reading, moving up reading levels, in terms of their writing, both expository and narrative writing, and just using, when you see them using the language structures or the vocabulary in their writing and celebrating that with them and highlighting them, they just want to do it more. So it just becomes a whole cycle of success.